everyone, today I'm going to talk you through making refried beans in your Instant Pot. And I'm going to start by saying I soaked my beans overnight, and even though I'm making it in the Instant Pot, I like to soak my beans because I find they're less gassy. Although at this point I eat so many beans, it might just be that my body knows how to digest beans now, which is the true way of making beans so they're less gassy, is you just make more beans. You eat more beans, your body gets used to it. So I soaked about 2 cups of beans. I didn't measure, I never measure anything, but I soaked about 2 cups of roughly pinto beans overnight, which they of course expand, so it's like 4 cups today, maybe more. I can't quite tell, I'm terrible at judging that. But besides my Instant Pot and these beans, my ingredients are an onion, garlic, 2 jalapenos because I love jalapenos in my beans, cumin powder, oregano, pepper, and I will add a little bit of salt, but I won't add probably a lot while I'm cooking it. And actually, sometimes at the end, I will mix in some salsa right into the beans. But to spare you the boredom of watching me chop my vegetables, I am going to chop my onion and my garlic and my jalapenos to get them ready to saute. I'm actually going to saute them right in the carafe of my Instant Pot because this is really one pot cooking. And so I will show you that part once we get there. I just think it's going to be boring for you to watch me chop vegetables. So I will check back in once my veg is prepped and as things are going into the Instant Pot. All right, see you soon. All right, so we have our onions, jalapeno, and garlic prepped. And I'm going to come over here. I'm using a 3-quart Instant Pot. And this is one of the simple ones. I love it. So you'll turn on your saute feature. And then just pushing that button, it will automatically turn on once you hear beep. I actually had mine warming up ahead of time, actually. See, there you go. It is now sauteing. I had mine on ahead of time, so I know that it's a little bit hot. I'm actually going to take some extra virgin olive oil and just pour a bunch into my pot here. And that is the fat I'm using for my beans. Look at this, I'm trying to... And then I am going to add all of my vegetables at once. I know that's not like maybe the best approach. And we're just gonna saute this down for a little bit, stirring occasionally. And once those onions have shrunk and turned translucent, I will add my beans. I'll check back in a bit. All right, so the onions are cooking down. I've been stirring them occasionally. I'm gonna add in some of these spices now because it's gonna just be easier to stir them. As you can see, I don't measure anything. And I recommend you start just like playing around. If you need to measure things, figure out where you like your spice levels and play around with it. That was really loud, my apologies. Now we're gonna add some beans to this. And like I said, I soaked mine last night. Now I like to ride the line on this 3-quart pot, and I pretty much put it to the fill line. Now, we need a liquid in here to cook, but since I soaked my beans last night, I don't have to worry about having so much liquid that they're going to burn to the bottom in the time it takes to cook. That said, I am going to add more of these spices now that I have the beans in. Cumin. Maybe a little more pepper. And I'll add my salt at the end. It's actually a myth that you can't add salt to your beans until the end or they don't cook properly. But I still don't like to have too salty of a product ahead of time because I'm going to add salsa to this. I'm going to have different ways of cooking this. or eating this, and so I don't want it to be overly salted. So I'm going to turn off the saute function. I'm going to close my lid. And don't forget to turn your valve over if you have one of these old school Instant Pots. And then I am going to pressure cook this on high for 30 minutes. If you didn't want to make refried beans, you could cook it less to have more of a bean, but these beans are actually gonna be disintegrating at the end. I'm gonna blend them or mash them so it's like a nice refried bean. And there you go. You come back in 30 minutes and you can release the pressure on your Instant Pot, and we'll do the next step then. See you in 30 minutes. While this is cooking, one thing I forgot to mention is you can use water, chicken broth, or vegetable broth. And I didn't worry about adding too much water because at the end, I can actually siphon some of that excess liquid off if I need to, and I have plenty times in the past. So again, I'm not measuring, and with this recipe, it's really forgiving because we're gonna mash these beans at the end anyway. If you didn't soak your beans, I would say play around with how long you put this in the Instant Pot for. Probably you're gonna need a minimum of 45-50 minutes, but I've noticed Instant Pot recipes aren't all very precise, so you have to play around with your Instant Pot to see how many minutes maybe unsoaked beans take. Again, these would take less than 35 minutes or 30 minutes to be cooked, but I'm kind of overcooking on purpose, so they're just easy to mash at the end. All right, thanks. All right, so the Instant Pot beeped and told me it was done counting down, and now you can see it says 1. It's actually counting up. I'm not going to do a completely natural release. I'm going to come over here and just, whoa, not that much, just lightly open the valve. So I'll be doing a slow release, and then we'll get to the next step. One thing I wanted to mention as we're waiting for this to finish releasing, and it's been going for 6 minutes since we started at 1, is if you're new to the Instant Pot, when the Instant Pot is pressurized, that button will be popped up. And when it's safe to open, that button will drop back down underneath this piece. So I'll show you that as well when it's time to open this, but that's one thing to consider, is if that little button is pushed up, that means the pot is pressurized and you should not open the lid or even try to open the lid. So the pressure is just about completely gone. I can barely hear anything happening, but that's still pressurized, as you can see. We are 14 minutes after the end of the cycle, and we're just waiting for this right here to drop. Look at that, I touched it and it fell down. So we're ready for our next step. We're just gonna open our lid up, and we have some beans. As you can see, there's a lot of liquid still in there. And I might siphon just a little bit of that off before I take my immersion blender. And if you don't have an immersion blender, that's fine. You can use a potato masher or even like a wooden spoon to kind of mash these beans in. But I might actually siphon off just a little bit of this liquid, because otherwise our beans might be a little too runny. Plus, I'm also gonna add in some liquid of some salsa. That looks good. You actually wanna keep some of the liquid that's cooking there, because as you mash your beans, that will all incorporate. And I think that looks like a good consistency. All right, let's see if I can do this one-handed. I've got my immersion blender. we're just about there with our refried beans. All right, so I just tasted these and they do need salt for sure. So I'm just gonna, again, I don't measure, salt to taste. It's a pretty big batch, so you can be fairly generous with your salt. But also, I'm gonna take this jar of salsa and I'm gonna pour some in, just because I like the taste of it. It's completely optional. You absolutely do not need to do this, but it tastes so good to me. So I just add in, I don't know, between a third to a half a jar. And again, you can salt that to taste. And I will portion these out into little Ziploc containers, and I'll keep one out for several servings, and then I'll throw the rest in the freezer so I can pull out just a few servings at a time. All right, so we're all packed up, and each one of these tubs is probably 4 to 5 servings of beans, in my opinion. And I also just whipped up lunch, which is actually one of my favorite breakfasts, which is refried beans, eggs, little cheese, and some cilantro and hot sauce. And that is an easy Instant Pot refried bean. Enjoy.